Welcome in, everybody, to another MLS Monday by Scarves and Spikes. It is, I don't know, half the crowd. I feel like we've been playing musical chairs lately on this show and every show because the month of May is off the chain.
I know. I got to call you out, though. You're kind of coming in hot at the beginning. I mean, well, before we started here,
Yeah.
but
that's just the whole month.
You made it. Glad Henry made it.
He is inherently ridiculously busy in the Pilgrim House.
Good to see Henry back. He's been traversing the United States, the Western United States, over the past few weeks, but he is back. He's on the playing a little bit hurt this episode, but good to have him back in the fold. Henry.
Yeah, we're good. I'm back here. I don't know if I'll be allowed back in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, but it's just fun to see this team playing decent soccer, and I'm glad to be back on the show. It feels like forever.
Yes.
But yeah, just
tell everybody why you were out, Henry.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So for the past week and a half-ish, I was kind of doing a road trip over in the West. So we started in Las Vegas, and then we went up through to LA, and then up through San Francisco, and then all the way up to Seattle. So many hours driving. By the way, pro tip, the desert, exactly how you imagine it in the movies. It's just like empty stuff. There's nothing for miles except the occasional like gas station, but it was pretty fun. We got to do some pretty fun stuff.
Yeah.
And it was all because of you have graduated from college.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
sir.
I kind of buried the lead there, but I've graduated. I now have a piece of paper that says I am a journalist. So.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Look at that. As if you weren't already.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pop open this special edition Atlanta United fan Coke for you.
Oh, cool.
Not sponsored, by the way.
Not sponsored. No alcohol.
It'd be nice if Coke sponsored us. It'd be nice if Coke.
Oh, he's got the alcohol there. All right, whatever.
Make it a Cuba Libre.
Alcohol. Yeah. Guys, match day 15 in the books. It's hard to believe that we're almost halfway through the season. Wednesday will bring another set of matches. Saturday will be another set of matches. And then, guys, we'll be halfway through the season. We look at Club World Cup and all that good stuff. But, yeah, match day 15 featured its twists and turns, didn't it?
It's one way to describe it.
It was a fun one for sure. There's a lot of crazy games.
Well, why don't we get started? Where do you guys want to start? There's a lot we could talk about, obviously.
I think so. There's one key thing that we're going to have to talk about. Obviously, so tonight, and I got to throw this out there. We're doing two shows. This is a double match week, right? We have MLS Monday now. We're going to go till what we say 8, a little after 8.
Yeah, 8-ish.
We'll try
8-ish. Then we're going to dive over to our Atlanta recap show. So we're going to talk about a specific incident a little bit later on. From both sides, the Cincy side and then the Atlanta side on the Atlanta show. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but that's okay. You'll find out.
Yeah, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or iHeart, that's what it's called. Yeah, cue up that Atlanta United episode after you get done listening to this. Or if you've already listened to the Atlanta United episode, if you're listening on the podcast feed, listen to the MLS episode again. You guys know what I mean. I'm like... We try to plug. you guys know what I mean.
Listen to all of our shows. There you go.
Listen to all our content.
I got to give one more quick shout out. Thank you to everybody that came out to the Signia by Hilton Atlanta, the Nest on 4 bar yesterday.
Yes.
We know from an Atlanta perspective, things have been pretty dire lately.
Just a little.
But the fans still showed out. Like we had, really good turnout for a Sunday evening on Memorial Day weekend at the hotel, like for a live show.
Yep.
We had a great time. There was lots of folks there to see us that just there, maybe by happenstance. Of course, MomoCon was going on as well, but we had a lot of people that were there for us, and that was really cool. So we truly appreciate that.
No.
And the stadium actually filled out really well last night.
It did.
I was truly, truly impressed.
Yeah, it did. And, obviously the Braves are playing MomoCon, Memorial Day weekend, all of that stuff. But you're right, it did fill in. So credit to the fans for showing up for the match. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on this show, talking about maybe from a more neutral standpoint. Of course, we'll have our Lady United reaction podcast as well. We'll get into the in depth. But guys, I figure we should start out with a big match happening in Chester, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia Union, Miami, Inter Miami, I should say. I would say Miami FC. That's a different league. That's the ESL Championship. Philadelphia Union, Inter Miami, 3-3 draw. Messi scoring late. Segovia scoring late. Guys, it's just the turning point Miami needed for its season. By the way, Messi with a pretty fantastic free kick goal. So it's just a turnaround Miami needs to get their season back, quote unquote, on track. Tyler, what do you think?
I don't feel like they ever really went off track. I think they,
by their standards.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think they hit a couple speed bumps. They have, guys who cumulatively together are over like 150 years old that consist of the main attacking threat for them.
Yeah.
We knew, just like last year, as the schedule congestion starts to creep up, of course, they were in Champions Cup and, playing games and doing really well. Things were going to get a little dicey, a little tough. And Philly's a good team. Philly's one of the best teams in the league right now, period. And so we knew this was going to be a struggle. I think they had their moments in the past couple of matches. Miami did, and they just got beat defensively, which has historically been their weak point. And I mean, kudos to them because they came back. Philly kind of dropped the ball. Philly should have won it. They didn't. But I mean, I think this is kind of what you expect. Now, what I'm really curious about is not so much this game, but then what goes on after this, because you have, again, you've got double match weeks, you've got the international break, you've got a lot of things going on that could really throw a wrench. So to answer your question, I think to a degree, it might get them back to their standards, but we'll see how long that can last.
Yeah. What about you, Henry?
I'm going to push back a little bit on one point that Tyler said. I do think that they had a bit of a dip. You look back, they have lost 5 of their last 8 games, and they were staring at a 6th loss in this game. The comeback started in the 87th minute. And then there were 2 spectacular goals. I mean, Messi, a free kick that you almost kind of sensed from the moment that the free kick was given. And then just a really sensational strike from Telasco Segovia. I think it's an important point because of who the Union are and their position right now on the table, and the fact that they're playing some of the kind of better soccer in the league right now. And this skid kind of started for Miami ever since their elimination in CONCACAF Champions Cup against Vancouver.
Right.
So, they've got 2 games before their Club World Cup campaign starts. And you want to go into that kind of thing. That's your biggest moment. That's your biggest stage. You want to go into that with the best momentum possible. And so getting a point against, at that point, the league leaders is a good result, I would say. Obviously, you'd prefer to have a more dominant performance, but Messi had spoken, I believe, after the game before that, which was the Florida Classico, whatever they're calling that these days. They lost 3-0 against Orlando. Messi was talking about unity. Was talking about, the squad needs to come together and kind of face this together. And I think they did so in this game. And that resilience showed in the fact that they were able to overcome a 2-goal deficit in a matter of minutes at the end. So it's credit to them. And hopefully, from an MLS perspective, hopefully they can continue that momentum into these next, these last couple of games you have before that Club World Cup campaign, and then that they can carry that into said Club World Cup campaign, and hopefully maybe give us some surprises there. Because I think implicitly we're not expecting Miami to make a deep run in a tournament.
No, not at all.
Facing teams like Man City and Real Madrid and stuff like that, but you do kind of, as an MLS team, I think you can kind of get behind them and kind of hope for them to have the best. And I think their best chance is taking some momentum into that run.
Yeah, and you look at their schedule coming up. They take on Montreal and they play Columbus, both at home. You have to fancy their chances to beat Montreal at home. Columbus is going to be a little bit tougher on Saturday. What's a reasonable expectation for Miami? It will switch to Philly just in a moment, but what's a reasonable expectation for Miami, do you guys think, over these next 2 matches, I feel like, anything less than 4 points will be a failure to them. Anything less than 3 points will be a failure to them. I think that's just the bar that's been set with Messi, with Suarez, Alba, the Galacticos of Inter Miami, that, anything less than, I guess, perfection isn't good enough. And this run that they're on, going before Philadelphia, before the draw, it's just tough for them. Yeah. There are some questions being asked about Mascherano. Is he the coach for this team? So I think if you look at these next 2 matches, you have to at least get 4 points out of these next 2, right?
Yeah, Montreal for sure. I think Montreal has to be 3 points, even though they are kind of, I guess, they're growing into things a little bit, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I think Montreal has to be 3 points, and I would say a kind of skidding Columbus you could also get 3 points out of, and you're at home for both of these games. So I would expect 6 points, 4 points minimum.
Yep.
What do you think, Tyler?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think to me, this Miami team consists of it's such a tale of 2 pieces, because you've got the guys that have been through the biggest pressure situations in soccer, right? You've got the Messis and his friends. Like, we joke around about it, but they've been through the ups and downs, the highs and the lows. And their leadership is what's going to get this Miami team through the really tough moments. But then you've got these younger guys who super talented, but they don't have that experience, and they're learning from the best, to be fair. But can they learn? Can they keep their head held high in these moments when it does get tough, when, Superman and Messi is not saving the day? Granted, he did a pretty good job in this one, but yeah, I mean, I think if I'm realistically looking, I'm a Miami player, and we've talked about it. Obviously, they're going to go into the Club World Cup expecting and trying to do everything they possibly can. But you're going up against the best teams in the world.
Sure.
And I'm just being honest, Miami and pretty much any MLS team right now isn't gonna typically, it's MLS, so you never know, isn't going to typically hold their own against, the Man Cities of the world, right? Porto, maybe, Al Ain, like some of these players, like some of these teams they could maybe do some things against. But you look at the overarching tournament, and it's going to be a struggle. But they're going to give it their all, and so you're going to probably see another version of this where Miami, maybe they do fairly well in this quote unquote summer. It's not a break because things are still going on during it, but you'll have the fixture congestion. You're going to have Miami really trying to put their foot out there on the world stage, because at the end of the day, that's what they want to do. They want to be at one of those world football clubs that everybody knows. So you're going to probably suffer a little bit in MLS play. So it's going to be up to Miami. I mean, and Messi and Busquets and these elders, these veterans, to keep the younger guys on track and keep them where they need to be, so that when all of this is over, they can have a good run at the end of the season. We'll see. As far as like their entire season, I'm not worried about it. I know a lot of people, a lot of Miami fans, like, man, sack Mascherano, all this. I personally, I agree with you. Not the same reasons. I don't think he should have been hired in the first place, but that's my opinion. But I don't think they have much to worry about. I really don't.
Yeah, I think kind of flipping the field. Let's talk about Philadelphia. I mean, Philly's still top of the East, at the end of the match day. 1 point clear of Cincinnati at this point in time. We'll talk about Cincinnati a little bit. Yeah, we'll talk about Cincinnati a little bit later. But if you're Philadelphia, is it a bump in the road? I mean, certainly 2 points drop, but is it a bump in the road, or maybe, hopefully not for them, a sign of things to come? They have 2 pretty winnable matches on their slate, at Toronto, at Dallas. I mean, they can easily get 6 points. But even without Gastag on the team, they've still been able to stack points together. They've still been able to win matches. Didn't happen against Miami. So, I mean, if you look at them, it just has to be a bump in the road, right? You just say, hey, we just got to turn the page from here, right? I'll
say this real quick, Henry, and then you dive in. To answer the question simply, yeah. I mean, they played a really good game, and it was definitely two halves for the most part. I mean, it was all Philly first half. Second half, Miami really starts to push. They get the second goal thanks to that Messi, free kick magic. Like Henry said, you kind of expect at that distance, Messi's he's gonna make you pay. And then it was in going into stoppage time, it was all Philly again. They were pushing. They had one off the woodwork. So you thought, man, like, all right, and they can just do enough to kind of keep it level, maybe pull out their Philly dark arts, see it out. Like they could have won this game 3-2. But they go for another goal off the woodwork, and then things come back the other way, and they get punished for the equalizer.
Should they have gone for another goal, do you think? Or just try to see it out?
I think at that point, I think you got to see it out. I think you got to frustrate. I mean, it'd be different if we're talking like the 70th, even the early 80th minute. But by that point, dude, you're winning 3-2 at home. You are one of the best dark arts teams in the league.
Or at least you were.
Yeah. Just do your thing. Just do your thing. Control the tempo. They didn't do that. They got punished by a team that in the attack, they're going to make you pay. So it's a bump in the road. It's frustrating, but Miami's a team that can do that to you.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. I don't really have much to add to that. I mean, I'm not too concerned about Philadelphia. They're going to be fine. There isn't really a game in their near future where I wouldn't call them the favorites. They're just a strong side that's playing some of the best transition soccer in the league right now, and that's really tough for teams to withstand. And Miami is just a great side overall, even if they aren't in the best form that we expect them to be in. So, it's a result that you're disappointed from a Philadelphia perspective because, yes, you should hang on when you are 3-1 ahead in the 87th minute. But, it could be worse. And honestly, Philly is going to be fine.
Yeah, no, nothing to worry about for them. And again, two pretty winnable matches coming up for them against TFC and Dallas. So, again, tough to lose, not lose, feels like a loss after having a 2-goal lead, but tough to let that result slip by for the Philadelphia Union. Let's go to the West Coast. Vancouver Whitecaps themselves had a comeback against RSL. Brian White had a brace, but Pedro Vite scoring late to give Vancouver a 3-2 win over RSL.
Supporter Shield leaders.
Supporter Shield leading
Vancouver Whitecaps.
Vancouver Whitecaps.
Say the full name.
Yes, Supporter Shield leading Vancouver Whitecaps. Sorry, Whitecaps fans, if you're watching or listening. Only by a point, though, guys, but with a match in hand. So that's important as well. Vancouver, of course, they have Champions Cup final coming up on Sunday. But if you look kind of big picture, take a look at Brian White. Brian White, some quarters we call the MVP of Major League Soccer at this point, adding another 2 goals to his total. 10 goals right now, 3 behind Barabo from Philadelphia. But he just is on another level, the form of his life right now. And with the roster coming out for these friendlies coming up before Gold Cup for the U.S. men's national team, and Harold, I'll start with you. Where does Brian White stack up in the U.S. striker pool? You have Pat Audemang, who is also a part of that pool for the U.S. men's national team. Brian White also on that list. Where does he stack up when you put him up against players like Audemang? When you put him up against players like, who else is on this list? Balogun, Damian Downs from Kern, how do you write Coventry City? He's got to be, as far as that group is concerned, got to be at the top, right, of that specific poll, Henry?
I would say he's first. If you look at the list of, that preliminary, Gold Cup roster, I would put him at the top. He is the most informed striker of those 5. He is at one of the best moments in his career so far. I need to pull up the stats, but there was an interesting stat. He has had double-digit goals in each of his past 4 seasons. This is fourth consecutive season of double-digit goals, and he's just at the best moment right now in his career, and so it's hard to argue with that. Yeah, from that striker pool that they have on that preliminary roster, I would say he's at the top, and he's just a great all around striker, honestly. So I would give him the benefit of the doubt there and see how he does in the Gold Cup, and I think from there you can really judge whether he is your guy. And by the way, the reason I say that. Fuller and Balogun, he's been kind of dealing with injuries. Pat Ajimong is a great shout, but I just see Brian White as in a little bit better form and having just some better numbers.
Yeah. And that best good question, and Tyler, I'll let you jump in here real quick. Best question, why is he just now getting looks by the men's national team? Pochettino, of course, still looking to Pochettino still putting a stamp on this program, but Brian White's just now getting a look and significant opportunities to represent the United States. Tyler, I'll let you take it from here, I guess.
So this is going to sound like we're hijacking this conversation and turning it into a U.S. men's national team conversation. I'm not, I promise. But it goes hand in hand, right? So I'll get back to Vancouver and Brian White in a second. The men's national team, obviously, Mauricio Pochettino is the coach. If you know Pochettino, if you follow Pochettino or any of his mentors, Bielsa being one of them, very major influence, they are all about discipline, business. We're here to do the job. We're here to be better every single day, even if it's just a small percentage point. We're not sitting back, resting, hanging out. And his quote that Pochettino put out when this Gold Cup roster was announced was something along the lines of, if you come to camp and you want to spend time, play golf, go for dinner, visit family, visit friends, whatever he kind of said, like that is Pochettino in a nutshell. And it implies that there has been a culture of, I'm not going to say laziness, but maybe complacency.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And the problem with that is Pochettino is the complete opposite of that. He is, because everybody looks at it and they're like, oh, well, we have the World Cup here in, a little over a year, 300 and whatever it is, 80 days. Yeah. Why are we not bringing in, the Pulisic's, which is a story in and of itself? And, a lot of the old guys, the guys that have been around for a minute. There are a couple of reasons, but I think Pochettino is trying to reset some of the culture here. Brian White, coming back to Vancouver, is the kind of guy, he is no frills, right? He is not the big, massive signing
flashy guy,
He's just a dude that goes out, plays good soccer. He's in the MVP conversation. He's in the Golden Boot conversation. He's on a team that nobody expected to be in first place right now. And he does the hard work. He does the crap and gets the results. And he's turning into a shark in and around the box. And he's fitting the bill of what you want in an American striker.
Yeah.
And so bring him in, let him see what he can do. He's already proven it to you in the hellhole that is Mexico during Champions Cup.
He has another chance to do it in a week. Yeah.
Yeah. In MLS, week in and week out. And a lot of times getting braces, things like that. So yeah, put him in a national team camp. See what he can do. You've got time, right? But I think more than that, it's his work ethic has shown and proven itself this year already. Now put him in the U.S. and just see kind of how far that can take him. I'm totally good with it. I have no issues with what Pochettino has done, and I think Brian White's going to go and prove exactly why Pochettino was right. I'm going to get off my soapbox while Sydney, you unmute. Sorry.
I will jump in, though, and say that Edgar has a good point in the chat. Talking about, Brian White's window is small. He's 29. And you also have to wonder how much of – he works very well in Vancouver system, but how much of that will translate to the USMNT, which I think we could say for at least the recent games, the recent performances that they've had. I'm not really sure if you could kind of pinpoint what their kind of identity is at this point, how they are meant to come together.
Yeah.
And I think, this Gold Cup it's going to be a very interesting thing because you have a World Cup in a year. And so I think Pochettino is just trying to really find the guys that can step up and be part of that run in a year, will Brian White still be in this form come that time? Of course, the short term for me, that's why I named them at the top of that Gold Cup roster. But you got to think about these things. Everything sets up for the World Cup. We're on that road, and so like you said, 300 and whatever days until that.
So let's take a look at RSL now. They're now winless in their last 5 matches. Last win against San Diego, 3-1 on April 26th. Are the wheels kind of falling off for them? Granted, 2 of those losses have been against Vancouver, but then they've drawn Dallas on the road. They've drawn Portland at home. They've lost to Colorado on the road, and now they've come home and lost to Vancouver. What do you make of Fabio Mastroianni and his kind of, I want to say his job security is in jeopardy at this point, but you have Diego Luna, who has been in really good form this season, but you're kind of missing Chito Nango. I feel like from that roster, I feel like it's starting to really show for RSL. Right now, they're outside of playoff places at this time. Where does RSL go from here? That's the big question.
Find a striker.
Yeah.
I mean, you haven't, ever since you moved on from one of the best strikers to be in this league in this decade, you haven't really had direction. And I think that's, there's only so much that Diego Luna can do for you. You know what I'm saying? He can create. He's a very creative player. He's very good with the ball, and he can set you up. But at the end of the day, you need someone that can finish in that box, that can be a true danger, that can occupy center backs, that can, be that guy. And so they had, I forget the name, but they had a target at close to the end of this window.
Yeah.
And then because Boa Vista sucks as a club, they couldn't get their target. And so now you're stuck. Yeah, now you're stuck waiting until at least July to add someone who you hope will change the trajectory of your season. Yeah. They're 12th in the West right now. They're in the same position Atlanta's in right now.
Yeah.
Just to put that in perspective. But, when you're missing a piece like that, to me, it makes sense. And you look at, where they are in terms of, goal scoring. And, there's hardly any games where they score multiple goals. The last game where they scored multiple goals, that was April 26th against San Diego. Before that, that was their last win. And then before that, the Galaxy, and, the Galaxy are just going through it. So
just a little bit.
So here's the thing.
That's troubling.
You add a striker. Yeah. Look, you add a striker even close to Chicho's caliber, and this team improves. So that's what they're kind of banking on. I know it sucks to say, like, wait until there's like 7 games left in the season to add your quality striker, but at that point, I think that's the only thing that you could really do right now.
What do you think, Tyler?
I mean, I agree. I think if you look at, I was just kind of doing a little bit of side research here while you were talking, but their entire striker core has a total average on, well, now this is FOTMob.
Yeah.
Full transparency. Has an average of 6 out of 10.
It's not great.
it's not great because, it's one thing to not be scoring goals, but it's also one thing to not be getting involved in the game. And I think that's kind of what you're seeing right now. Like Diego Luna is going to be, he's that up and coming guy. He's that kid that's really, really kind of growing into his own. He's getting, U.S. national team shouts as well. Like, it's nice to see. But right now, after losing Chicho, it's kind of a one-trick pony type deal. Nobody else is being that threat anywhere else on the pitch. So, I mean, I honestly think RSL, though, is not far from being a really good team. But it's just that, like Henry said, you need a good striker. You need somebody who's really going to be goal dangerous. And you can't blow leads. You went up 2-0 in the first 5 minutes of this game.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
4 minutes, dude.
Yeah.
How do you blow that?
You can't do that. I mean, it's one thing, all right, 2-0, most dangerous lead in soccer. You're playing against the best team in the league right now. Brian White does his thing. Get it. Got to come out of there with a draw, at least.
Right.
You can't give up that go-ahead goal at the end of the match to lose another one. So you know, it's a little bit of a mentality thing. And then also, you know, it's you need somebody that can give you something threatening, really threatening in the final third.
I'm trying to think of a good segue from that to mention their sponsor, Sweetwater Brewing Company. Guys, I'll just do it. Sweetwater Brewing Company, sweetwaterbrew.com. Thank you for your support of Scars and Spikes. They are a part of Scars and Spikes, have been for the past few months. We definitely appreciate their support of the program. Yeah, go to sweetwaterbrew.com for more information. Where to buy their products, the Pale 420, all the other items they sell, the drinks they sell. There's a list, of course, on the website, sweetwaterbrew.com. G13.
Day Trip IPA.
Yeah, you know more than I do. You know more than I do. But yeah,
Sweetwater starting 11, go.
Yeah,
I might be able to do that.
Right. No, but sweetwaterbrew.com for more information on them. Scarvesandspikes.com. Get our contact on Atlanta United news analysis and opinion, of course, from the win against Cincinnati. Going to preview the match against Orlando City coming up on Wednesday. Patreon.com/scarvesandspikes. We have a Discord. We have bonus content starting at $1.20 a month. Also at scarvesandspikes.com is a link to our store. Get Scarves and Spikes merchandise to help support the show. So our little plug, our little business before we move on here.
You know, now you got me thinking really quick. Total sidebar, Henry. I'm thinking like what would be if we did a Sweetwater starting 11? What would be the striker? And I think it's got to be the gummy beer that they have.
Because I want to hear this reasoning.
It's lethal.
It has a little kick.
It's got some kick. It's got some zing to it. It'll sneak up on you when you're not expecting. And kind of like Jamal Tiara did last year with
I think it's Toronto.
And it's just all around solid. You don't need it every day. You don't need it to come out and do everything all at the same time every single day you have one.
Yeah.
But when you do, you better be ready for it. I was just kind of thinking in my head.
Yeah, that's some good stuff. Maybe we need a Patreon episode where you go through your Sweetwater starting 11.
That's a good idea.
Give us some
surprise. Maybe something to look for in the future.
There we go. Go join Patreon. Patreon.com/Scars and Spikes.
You know what else you got to look for?
What do we got to look for?
Flying elbows from Brian Gutierrez.
Getting sent off against NYCFC. And that's not the rest of the story. Getting called out a little bit by Greg Berhalter after the match. So let me ask you guys, Tyler or Henry, whoever wants to take it first. Henry, I guess you can start us off here. Was this the right call for Greg Berhalter to call out Brian Gutierrez at the end of that match? They lost 3-1. Was Berhalter within his rights to do so publicly, or is that something you just talk about behind closed doors? What do you think?
I think he was right to do it. Look, Brian Gutierrez is a great player. He's one of, I want to say, the better young chance creators in this league. And he's an important piece for the Chicago Fire. He's 21, which is wild to me.
Yep.
He's literally like a month older than me, which is wild. But, look, what he did, that elbow it's completely reckless. It's senseless, and it's a very kind of I'm trying to find the best way to say this, but kind of infantile mistake, if you will. Yeah. It's not something that a professional, you have to know better. And I think this is a lesson for him. I don't think Greg Berhalter said this publicly to humiliate him necessarily, but more so that he learns from this, because he'll never forget this now. And I think that'll stick with him, because he's done this kind of thing before. He's had reckless red cards before. And so this is one where, you really let your team down. You have them playing a man down for 60 minutes. So I think he's right to point it out and kind of give him that moment, teach him that lesson, and then move on from that.
I think you have to be careful. And Berhalter's been around the game for years, national team clubs, etc. I think he wouldn't have done it if he didn't think that Gutierrez would take the criticism less impersonally because, like you said, Henry, Gutierrez is still young. Doesn't seem like he's as young as he is because he's pretty accomplished with the crew, pretty accomplished on the international stage with the United States. So there's a relationship there that's already been in place. I don't think Greg Berhalter did it just to throw Gutierrez under the bus. Gutierrez has to understand you have to not put yourself in that position, and it cost this team a win. I mean, let's just not, let's call it what it is. It's a poor decision in the heat of the moment. He got himself sent off, and his team lost the match. So I think Berhalter is well within his rights to do so as the head coach, as the sporting director as well. I think Gutierrez needs to understand, hey, you can't play that way. And his coach is just looking out for him. But at the same time, you just need to be careful. And I think if it's another player that may have blown his top or taken it personally, I think Berhalter would have been very careful. But again, I think he understands that Gutierrez will learn from it. He knows that what he did was wrong. And I imagine I didn't see it. I'm not privy to what the conversation was in the technical area on the sideline, but I'm pretty sure he had some words for Gutierrez. Not so kind words for his young midfielder as he was coming off the pitch. So I think if you're Gutierrez, hopefully it's lesson learned. I think if either fires, hopefully lesson learned and something that he can move past and take a lesson from.
Yeah, I think there's a rapport there already. And so, I think it's easy to get caught in the trap, when we look at coaches and players and kind of that dynamic and relationship, to just think like a coach is going to treat his players all the same.
Yeah.
You can't do that. I mean, different players respond to different things. And like I said, one, there's a rapport from the past already with Berhalter and Gutierrez. But I think also that it's a little bit of a different aspect of Berhalter's coaching that I kind of wish we had seen when he was in charge of the men's national team. Not saying he didn't do that, but we didn't see it to that degree, right? Right. I mean, you even had players coming out saying it's like a very buddy atmosphere. No, like you see the talent and the men's national team, that is the top tier. Then you come down, to the Chicago Fire. You have a lot of good players on that team. You have to handle them differently, but ultimately you've got to figure out what motivates each of them and what is going to get them to the next level. And Gutierrez, like, he's got a pretty high ceiling. And sometimes you just got to call somebody out for stepping out a little too far and doing something dumb. Like, irresponsible. Like, it was irresponsible. It was stupid. You have single-handedly caused a problem and, blown, this team some points. So, I mean, call him out. It's fine. I don't see it. And it's one thing if he's coming out every week and just like dogging on people.
Right.
That's obviously not Berhalter.
Yeah.
But you got to call a spade, like you said. And I don't see a problem with it. But I mean, that also, like, that was stupid.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
I think part of the frustration is it kind of stemmed what had been a nice little run of form for them.
Yeah.
Sure, they drew Orlando 0-0, but they ended up beating Atlanta at home. They blew out Charlotte on the road at the bank in Charlotte. And now you're coming into this match against NYCFC saying, hey, we're unbeaten in the last 3. We're on a 2-game win streak. Let's make it 3 in a row. Let's make it back-to-back wins on the road. And then Gutierrez, commits the foul that gets him sent off, and it kind of turns things upside down. Of course, you essentially get played off the pitch 3-1 because that red card came after Zinkernagel had scored. So you're up 1-0, and then Gutierrez getting sent off, and they get another player sent off later on. So they finished with 9 men, and NYC took advantage of it. They truly the better team on the day, and you have to learn from every Brian Gutierrez. So I have no problem with it. It sounds like the rest of us don't have a problem with it either. Let's talk about the Columbus Crew, guys. Columbus Crew now winless in 4 matches. This is a team that obviously is among the best in MLS every single year, especially under Wilfred Nancy. But losing to Charlotte snapping a 5-game losing streak by beating the Crew. Kind of a big win for Charlotte to get things back on track. But if you look at Charlotte, they drew on the road against Philadelphia. They drew on the road against Montreal. Hellas Real, they drew Cincinnati 1-1. Now you lose 3-2 against Charlotte. Are they coming back to earth a little bit? Is this a Crew that we're to expect moving forward, or is it a bump in the road? What do you guys think?
I'm not too worried for Columbus at this point.
Yeah.
The results, your past 4 winless. When you look at the individual performances and when you look at who those opponents are, I think Columbus is still doing the right things. They're still mostly dominating these games. They're still mostly putting a lot of shots in these games. They're creating a lot of opportunities. Yeah. Some of these instances are just unlucky. Here in Atlanta, we're familiar with unlucky and not being able to hit the back of the net. But for them, these games, I think there's added context in the fact that these are mostly tough teams. I mean, you look at 2-2 at Philadelphia. Philadelphia, one of the better home teams so far. I mean, one of the better teams in the league this season. The Hellas Real Cincinnati, one of the strongest teams in the conference, one of the strongest teams in the league. Right. Montreal, even, I would say. Montreal just tied LAFC 2-2. They were up 2-0 at one point in that game, and they were very close to getting that win.
Yeah.
And so Montreal is a team that is on kind of a rise. They are seeming to put things together. Giacomo Brioni is coming through for them in a lot of games, and I don't think they're, obviously they're last in the conference still, but I don't think they're a team that they're not as much of a laughingstock as they were before, because I think they're improving. And so that draw against them, I don't think that's anything to scoff at, especially when you look at, I mean, yes, Columbus put 14 shots to their 4, but still something's going right for them if they're having the run of form that they are right now. I think Columbus is going to be fine. I think, they have Nashville next, and we're about to talk about Nashville as being one of kind of the sneakier, better teams. It's a tough run they actually have. They have Nashville at home, then they're away to Inter Miami on the weekend, and then they visit Vancouver, they host Vancouver June 14th.
After the break,
After the break. But I still think that they're going to be fine. They still play some good soccer. They have to figure out the best way kind of to incorporate Gazdag, because I think they're still trying to figure him out a little bit more and to get him adjusted and to realize that he's not Cucho Hernandez. But I think that Columbus are going to be fine.
And just real quick, you look at the underlying numbers from the match against Charlotte. XG was 3 for Charlotte, 1.4 for Columbus. So that speaks to the quality of chances maybe not being the same as they were for Charlotte. Columbus had 7 shots on goal to Charlotte's 11. Of course, Charlotte did more of theirs than the Crew did, but it's still a tough loss for the Crew. And I guess, Tyler, what do you think? Is it bump in the road, or is it something more, do you think?
I mean, Columbus has a long way to go before they lose a lot of goodwill. They've just been so good for so long. This is a bump in the road. This is what happens to a team that, they've done well. They have a good track record of trading star players and still being okay after. I agree with Henry. I think they just got to figure out the best way to use Gazdag. But at the same time, like, more than that, with this game in particular, one, Charlotte was hungry. They got shot out of a can in the beginning of the season.
Desperate.
They hit a bump for sure, right? Because they were not maybe expected to do that well. They lost a handful, just really struggling. Then you got, Wilfred Zaha coming out being dramatic on social media, everything else. They were looking for a statement. They were looking for a win. But at the same time, take away all that, the way Charlotte plays, it is completely counterintuitive to what Columbus wants to do. This Charlotte team is good enough to kind of handle a Columbus team that wants possession and wants to kind of work their way around, and they play patiently. Charlotte does. And that is honestly one of the Columbus Crew's strengths in general is they're very patient in the buildup, and they're very precise, and they're very intentional with their passes and their movements and everything else. And they went up against a Dean Smith side that was like, no, I don't like, we're good. Like, we're good. We're going to wait until the opportunity presents itself, because you will make a mistake at some point, no matter what. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Man City. You're going to make a mistake, and then we're going to capitalize on it. And you couple that with the Charlotte need to just break out of this kind of losing streak, this frustrating moment that they were in. And I think it was just a recipe from the get-go for, you know, it to be a pretty close game. And that's exactly what we got. And I think Charlotte took advantage of their opportunities when they had them, because, I mean, they only had like 34% possession. So they were clinical when they needed to be. And, it's good for Charlotte, but it's nothing bad for Columbus. They just got beat. They're in a little bit of a rut, but I'm not going to sit here and say that they've, like blow the season up. Oh God, panic. They're okay. They'll be fine. They've got the best coach in the league by far. I think you're still muted, Sydney. They've got the best coach in the league by far. It's not a problem. They'll figure it out. They always do. Not concerned.
I feel like they're like that. Coach got sold in the offseason. Like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen now? But no, I mean, it is 4 winless in a row, and it kind of has set them back in the standings just a little bit. But that's not to say they can't get things back going here in the future.
That's
so
kind of what happened last year too. Like they were good. They were up near the top, but they weren't. They just kind of floated in that top 4, top 5, top 6 for most of the season. And that's fine. That gets you where you need to be.
Yeah.
Right. Unless you're really, really shooting for the Supporters Shield.
Right.
That gets you where you need to be. Probably going to get a home playoff game. I'm not concerned with them at all.
Yeah. Well, guys, I mean, I'll tell you one team that has really surprised me in 2025. That is, I was going to say Minnesota United. Well, they surprised me a little bit, but Nashville SC winning again. They beat TFC, who is kind of toward the bottom of the table. But this is a team under BJ Callahan. Speaking of Greg Berhalter, one of his disciples, BJ Callahan. They're third in the West, or third in the East. They're in the East now, not the West anymore. They have been in the East for the past couple of years. A little bit on points with Orlando, but with one more win there, Orlando 8 wins to Orlando 7, so they have the tie break. If you look at Nashville firing Gary Smith, parting ways with Gary Smith, toward the end of last season, you need a spark. You need to kind of reset things. They beat Toronto. They're now unbeaten in the last 6, 4 wins, 2 draws, 0 losses. Are they the best team, guys, in MLS that nobody's talking about? Nashville SC.
I think they're doing pretty well, yeah. Got to give them a lot of credit. If I'm not mistaken, they are 3rd in the East.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, on the tiebreak.
3rd in the East, and incredibly, 3 points away from the top, which I would not have had them there to start the season. But then again, I would not have had Atlanta 12th. Yeah, they're playing some good soccer. BJ Callahan has had them playing some very good soccer and is getting the most out of his players, specifically his DPs. Hani Mukhtar looks like the Hani Mukhtar that I think won MLS MVP back way back when. He looks great. Sam Surridge looks like the number 9 that they've needed. He's in great form. And I mean, I would say that they are kind of sneakily one of the better teams. Certainly, coming into this season, I would consider them. They've been underrated, and hopefully they can continue that. It'd be great for them. They are dominating games. They're creating more chances than their opponents in a lot of those games. We'll see though what happens. Of course, their next few games, I kind of feel like they could keep this run going. If you look at, they have a visit to Columbus. Columbus we talked about earlier. They've been in a little bit of a bump, but you know, you could get a result there. NYCFC is not, you know, the toughest opponent. Not trying to dunk on them or anything, but them,
especially except if they have 11 men to the opponent's 9.
That's true. Chicago, a team that literally I think like a month ago you put 7 on. New England, DC. These are games that they can definitely win, and I could see them continuing this run of form. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Tyler, what do you think?
I mean, I agree. I think they're that one kind of team that has just popped up in the Eastern Conference that maybe is taking folks by surprise, you know, and I feel like they're how Vancouver has been for most of Vancouver's existence, and that they just are there and they don't get all the plaudits. They don't get all the things like when in the past they had the kind of defensive capabilities that were just, that's what they were known for. They were rock solid, right? They had Walker Zimmerman. You had the guys, clean sheets abound. Like that's who they were. BJ Callahan comes in last year. He's trying to change the culture, change it into his style. And I feel like it's finally paying off. And that's cool to see from a coaching perspective. It's cool to see a coach come in and start to implement their style when they really haven't changed a ton in their lineup, in their roster. I mean, they've had some changes, but you're getting the most out of Sam Surridge, who wasn't before. And then Hani Mukhtar has had a little bit of a dip, and Hani Mukhtar has, to be fair, had to be the guy for that team for almost their entire existence.
Yeah.
The whole point of them bringing in Sam Surridge was to give him some help, to give him somebody to play off of. And they weren't able to make that happen before. Now they are. And so credit to BJ Callahan. I'm curious to see if it's sustainable for them, because they did start a little rockier in the beginning, you know, and now things are kind of leveling out and they've gone on a really good run. But I mean, I got to give credit to him. I think, you know, BJ Callahan, we've talked about partially throughout the show, the U.S. men's national team, when the whole Berhalter drama happened after the World Cup and Callahan stepped in, he didn't change a whole lot, knowing that he
got results.
But he did, you know, he won you know, some silverware for the U.S.
Yeah.
But I think he got the most out of the players that he called up at the time. And I think he's getting the most out of the players that he has for Nashville right now. And so it's cool to see. I like it.
Here's my one concern with Nashville. I pulled up the stats. So Surridge and Mukhtar, between the two of them, have 22 combined goal contributions thus far this year. Surridge, 8 goals, 3 assists to lead the team in goals, and Mukhtar, 6 goals, 5 assists, leads the team in assists. My only concern, guys, is can you find production outside of Surridge? Can you find production outside of Mukhtar? That's my only concern. I think if you're able to get other production or worker production from other players on this roster, I think this team is going to be much better. But if you look at them right now, Ahmed Kassem has 2 goals, their new signing. Daniel Lovitz, 2 goals. You don't really Lovitz, that's not his goal. That's not his job to score goals for you. He's a defender. Josh Bauer's been there for a minute, 2 goals. But then you look at Alex Muyl, a goal, Perez, a goal, Schaffelberg, a goal. You're not getting a lot of production from other players on the team. So if not Schaffelberg, if Surridge goes down, if Mukhtar goes down, you're in a little bit of trouble because half of that attack pairing is unavailable. So that's my only concern with Nashville. Can they get production? Can they make a move in the summer transfer window to bring in another player that can continue that? Let's say if the 2 I just mentioned go out injured, won't take over what they do, but maybe if you have just one more piece to Nashville, they can really turn things on. So that's what I'd be looking for the summer transfer window. Is it sustainable leading up to that?
I'm waiting in terms of Nashville. I am waiting for Alex Muyl to come out and finally admit that he is the long-lost Jonas brother. That man looks just like one of the Jonas brothers. I don't care what anybody says.
He does.
Every time I see Atlanta play them, I'm watching. Or every time I see him, you know, while we're getting ready for MLS Monday, I'm like, dude, he's a Jonas brother, and nobody can convince me otherwise.
Henry, are you a Jonas Brothers aficionado? at
Not
all?
really, honestly. I mean, I know who they are, but I wouldn't call myself an aficionado. Or
I definitely see it though.
Alex Mull is one of their brothers.
I definitely see it.
I definitely
see it. Do we want to hit out Atlanta versus Cincinnati real quick? I know we're doing that, talking more in depth on a separate stream or a separate episode, but do we want to dive in there super quick?
Yeah, let's dive into it a little bit. Obviously, so for everybody listening now and watching and listening after the fact, we have our whole Atlanta show in which we're going to dive into all the crap from this one in detail. And then also we're gonna get everybody prepped for Atlanta versus Orlando derby in the middle of the week. But that needs its own episode. Atlanta does, and the Atlanta Cincy stuff. But we do need to touch on it for sure because it was Sunday night soccer.
Yeah.
Wild Sunday night soccer, by the way. If you were neutral, are you not entertained?
It was a fun game, and it was. Look, I think there's a lot of talk of, is this a turning point for Atlanta? And it's hard to say that based on one game, but I will say
for sure,
I at least saw differences in how a lot of these players approach the game. I feel like there was a little bit more, kind of bite in the game. There's a little bit more, what would you say? Kind of passion, dog. Yeah. Yeah. There's just more of that. And it's good to see the team reacting, obviously, to, Ronnie Dyla calling the team soft, calling them, soft in those boxes and stuff like that. Exactly. So, and I think Derek Williams, there's a quote of him talking about, how that motivated him to, be clearing those balls at the back and then ultimately, go and get his goal and an assist, which for a center back, that's amazing. And so that's great for him. It's awesome for the team. And to win 4-2, I mean, it's not like if it was like a fluky, like 1-0 win, like sure, I wouldn't have as much faith in it, but you went and scored 4 goals. I trust, and by the way, and I'll go into more depth in the other show because I know we're running out of time, but I like the fact that they figured out how to attack and transition again. It's awesome. They attack quickly, they hit hard, and at first I was skeptical of the balls over the top, and I tweeted, oh shoot, they're going back to balls over the top again.
Right.
But it actually worked out pretty well in terms of putting your fast players in on goal in terms of creating those chances. So I want to see more of that. And the 3-5-2 is working. That's the good thing.
Yeah.
Run it back on Wednesday, and I think they could get a result against Orlando.
I think you're going to need to see more than this to say, oh, Atlanta's back. I don't think anybody's under the illusion that Atlanta is back.
You need consistency before Atlanta's truly back. We've seen this one all too many times before, haven't we?
Yeah. No, but this is a really big first step. I mean, you beat one of the top 4 teams in the Eastern Conference, and you could have had more goals, guys. This could have been 5-6-2 or something like that. So that shows that, hey, you're still leaving some meat on the bone. The second half showed that you're still not putting together 90-minute effort.
That's a phrase I've heard before.
No,
not in the context of
meat on the bone. What?
Yeah. There is still chances that
the Atlanta wing reference.
Right.
Were they lemon pepper wings?
Yeah.
Not sponsored by Wingstop.
Right. No, but yeah, there's still a few chances that they didn't take in the first half that maybe on another day would have come back to haunt them. But what I saw that we haven't seen from this team is the resiliency. And, as we were just talking about a few minutes ago, the killer instinct that Ryan Della said this team didn't have. You give up goal, not right out of the locker room, but pretty soon after the second half begins. You go
right out of the locker room.
Yeah, pretty much.
They barely touched the ball before that goal happened.
But no, you see your lead cut to 2-1. Minutes later, you go back up 3-1. You replenish your 2-goal lead. You give up another goal. You start to say, "Oh my gosh, can't let us see it out." And ultimately, Jamal Thierry comes in, gets free on a break, and makes no mistake to make it 4-2, the final margin. So that's what I really like from this team. It's the resiliency. They kept fighting. They kept playing. They didn't let their heads hang like we've seen from this team so many times this year. They make a mistake, their heads hang just like that. They came back, they stayed after it. Ultimately, they were rewarded. Still a long way to go. You need to have a more clinical effort against Orlando, a much better team than Cincinnati, but a massive big step in the right direction for Atlanta against Cincinnati.
Yeah, I will say this. I'm going to toot my own horn a little bit because I got cooked last week.
Yeah.
Internet. I thought that, and I even said it, like what Atlanta did well, which is relative, I will say that, against Philadelphia, they needed to carry that over and improve on it. And I feel like they did because they played Philly and it wasn't perfect, right? They got beat 1-0 off a penalty that came from a really boneheaded mistake. But there were aspects of that game that were good. And yeah, like people were like, oh, those are moral victories. Who cares? And I totally agree. Totally agree. Like moral victories aren't going to get you out of 12th place and up the standings. So you've got to win games.
Right.
But they took what they did relatively well, the things that they did relatively well, and they capitalized on them in this game. And this game wasn't perfect either. I mean, they had some mistakes. I mean, you talk about coming out of the half. It was like they didn't come out of the locker room until the 55th minute. Yeah. Like it was a struggle. And that's the little things like that cost you games. Like last night, man, you talking about clinching, man, that like the tension inside that building last night was palpable. Like it was wild.
Yeah.
You just kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. Thankfully, it was Jamal Tiare's shoe that dropped the other way. But man, and then it's like you get that third goal. Bartosz Slish, congratulations, by the way, to the Slish family.
Absolutely.
His wife is pregnant. But he gets a third one. It's like, all right, 3-1. Yay, we have a 2-goal lead again. Boom. Right after that, you get smacked in the face. And it's like, God, dude, why can't you just be normal? Hold on to a lead, please. It was way more stressful than it needed to be.
Yeah.
But you got the win. That's what matters. And I do think there's a lot here you can build on, continuing the momentum. We talked about it on 3 takeaways last night, and we'll definitely dive into it here in a minute on the actual show. But, I mean, you can't get too high. You can't get too low.
Yeah.
You've got to stay even keeled. You should absolutely go and enjoy it. But then last night, you got to be getting right back to the grindstone now to carry over. Cincinnati, on the other hand, diving into that side of it, because this is the MLS show.
Sure.
Their fan base is frustrated. I'm not going to bring up that thing because we're going to talk about that in a minute. But I mean, just in general, with the way that Cincinnati's playing, they were dangerous, man. Like they were incredibly dangerous in and around the box. They were picking Atlanta's back line apart while making, incursions into the box, being around the box. Like it was insane. And 27 shots. I think there was 39 shots total in the game, or 40, but 27 by Cincinnati.
So it'd be close to a team record for shots. It was very close. Yeah.
That's not sustainable. Brad Guzan even said it last night. That's not sustainable. Cincinnati, I mean, they're doing the majority of the work right. They didn't finish. Because if they did finish, we're having a totally different conversation.
No, absolutely.
So, Cincy's a great team. I do feel like they're going to be okay. But I do feel like Atlanta put out the lineup and the formation and the set of tactics that worked against this Cincinnati team. And I also think it's the best that works for Atlanta in general.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. Henry, what's to say about Cincinnati, this loss? What does it say about them, do you think?
Really, I think they just ran into Atlanta at the wrong time. I don't really have any worries about them, going on in this season. Though, from a Cincinnati perspective, they have faced a lot of just 1-goal wins, and they have a lot of kind of games where they maybe won a few more goals. They feel like they could do a little bit better. Sometimes it's shot conversion. Sometimes it's some of the other stuff. And they are the other team in MLS that's been big on a striker in Kevin Denke. And so maybe they're expecting a little bit more. Also, I guess for them, why hasn't that really come out? Well, because they're still at the top of the table and the performances have still been there. And they've built a team that is very solid at the back and can, use that foundation to then go and play their game. For me, I'm not really concerned about the rest of their season. They have some games that I would expect them to be the favorite in. Coming up, hosting DC or Dallas and DC, and then away at New England and Montreal. I would say that they should be able to get back on their rhythm.
Right.
Again, I'm not too concerned with them. I think, like I said, Atlanta hadn't figured out how to play decent soccer until we saw kind of signs of it in the last game against Philadelphia.
Yeah.
But then we saw it really come together in this game. And I think if you have this game played like 2-3 weeks ago, Cincinnati goes all over this Atlanta side.
I think so. I think so too. And just kind of sum it up, I think Cincinnati will be all right. I think obviously drawing Columbus and hell is real is frustrating. Losing to Atlanta is frustrating. Of course, you lose Hagelin for, I don't know, indefinite amount of time. We'll have to see what his situation is. And Tyler, you alluded to it. Cincinnati fans are up in arms over that. Should have been a red card on Latilat, should it have been. That's a whole other discussion for another day. But yeah, I think Cincinnati as a team played frustrated against Atlanta United when they got into a 2-0 hole. You saw the little exchange with Miazga and Celentano on the break that Latilat should have scored. You saw that frustration from both defender and goalkeeper. You saw some fouls that were out of frustration. You saw the biting language. They were upset. They were upset to be in that position that they're in, and I think that really came back to haunt them. I think if you're a Cincinnati fan, you would have liked to see the team handle their emotions a little bit better and keep a little bit of a more even keel coming out of the locker room. Of course, he came back twice to cut it into one, and then ultimately you lose. So I think from a Cincinnati standpoint, yes, it's frustrating. Yes, you're upset to lose, but I think you have a good chance to go on a run here if you're a Cincinnati fan. Which brings us to our matches to watch, presented by Sweetwater Brewing Company for Matchday 16. Guys, Wednesday matches coming up. Henry, we'll start with you. What's your match to watch for Wednesday?
I'm going to go with Seattle versus San Diego. Seattle's a team that, we expect them to top the West, most of us, before the season, and they're starting to get back up to that. They had a rough start to the season. And part of that was a 3-0 loss to San Diego about a month or so ago when they first played at Snapdragon Stadium. Seattle.
Game?
What was that?
Revenge game coming up?
This is the revenge game. Exactly. You are at Lumen Field. Seattle also preparing for, Club World Cup. They want as much momentum as they can going into that. And San Diego coming off a very exciting win that completed their LA Galaxy sweep, a 2-1 win with, the winning goal by Chucky Lozano. They are improving on their start, and they are pretty darn close to Vancouver at the top of the West, at the top of the Shield. And so they are extra motivated to go to a tough away ground and get a result. I think it's going to be a game of some fun soccer and potentially some caginess, because I feel like these two teams, I don't think there's a direct rivalry right now, but I think that they are in similar positions in the terms of they are teams that are at the top of the West, and they are kind of vying for, it is a 6-pointer for them, if you think about it. Yeah. So we'll see what happens, but I'm super excited for that one.
San Diego is also going to be looking to shake off more bad PR after the fights that broke out. Unfortunately, that's kind of been one of the other stories we didn't talk about, but they continue to, unfortunately, and it's not the club, it's not their fault. It's everything happening outside the four walls of the pitch. But they got to get Snapdragon Stadium under control. So
right. I'll jump in real quick with my match to watch for Wednesday. I picked Columbus versus Nashville. Really good matchup in the Eastern Conference. Columbus, we mentioned already, for in a row winless. Nashville, 3rd place in the Eastern Conference. Not a 6-pointer in the traditional sense in that Columbus is 2 slots down, but I think Nashville can really get a lot of people talking if they're able to get 3 points out of this one. And if other results fall in their favor on Wednesday, they could end the night top of the West or top of the East. I did it again with Nashville. But you look at Nashville and where they were last year when they parted ways with Gary Smith and you brought in Callahan. Who would have thought they'd be near the top of the West Eastern Conference nearly halfway through the season? But they have that opportunity against the Crew on the road. Crew, obviously, they're looking to get their things back in control. They've lost or they haven't won again in their past 4 matches, so they're going to be looking to get back on track against Nashville at home. So Columbus versus Nashville is my match to watch. Tyler, what's yours?
Mine is Rebels versus Charlotte. I think I'm intrigued, kind of going back to what I talked about earlier when I talked about Charlotte and the way that they play. Kind of, it was the opposite of how Columbus Crew wants to play, right? Charlotte doesn't necessarily need the ball, though they're not afraid to have it. The Red Bulls, on the other hand, they hate to have the ball. And that's just Red Bulls in general. Right. They've been that way for years. We know this. But I was kind of looking it up, going back to, this is the Red Bulls, going back to their touchdown versus the Galaxy. They had less possession, not by much, but they had less possession in that game and dropped 7 on the Galaxy. Then you go to a 2-1 loss against Nashville that you were talking about. Red Bulls had the majority of the possession, interestingly. Jump up to the 2-0 loss versus NYC and then the Hudson River Derby. We talked about that on MLS Monday on that small pitch, everything else. The Red Bulls had 64% possession, which is like uncharacteristic entirely for them.
Right.
Then they jump into the Open Cup against Dallas. That one was a little different because, one, it's the Open Cup. You got rotation, but also there was a red card involved. They had possession in that one. And then they just eked out barely possession against DC, who is not a good team. So I say all that to say, you've got 2 teams who are going to be basically kicking the ball to each other and saying, here, go make a mistake.
Yeah.
I'm very curious to see how this one plays out. Charlotte maybe getting a little bit of their swag back after beating, one of the best teams in the league. And then the Red Bulls are still trying to kind of capture some of that glory that they thought they might have had last year going into MLS Cup. And so it's intriguing to me. I'm curious kind of how this one plays out. I think it's going to be one of those, you're not going to have a team that just wants to sit there and kick the ball around and try to pinpoint. It's going to be lots of back and forth, in my opinion. Soccer, it's going to be end to end, and I'm cool with that. As a neutral, that makes it exciting for me. So I'm here for it. That one is actually at up in New Jersey. So we'll see how the Charlotte side handles some more adversity.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap for now.
MLS Monday.
That is a wrap for now.
Who's going to end the show?
Well, next, for everybody that is joining in, because we have
stay tuned.
1,000 people. I made that sound bigger than it is. We have a bunch of people watching. Y'all jump over. We are about to kick back up on YouTube, here on X, Facebook, to do our Atlanta United show. We're going to talk about Cincy. So if you're a Cincy fan or otherwise, come join us. We are welcoming. All right. We're going to talk about that thing that y'all all want to talk about. You know you do. We're going to chat about it, but please come join us. And if you haven't, we appreciate if you subscribe to the YouTube channel. It helps us out a lot. It really does. We truly, truly appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us, everybody, for MLS Monday. We'll see you next time.
In a couple of minutes. Am I going to have to sing? There's no music.
No?
Last week. Tried to switch it up a little bit. I said it was like epic music. It was not epic at all. Our music fits better.
I agree.
Agreed.